So we're back with some great Dark Beyond cards to review today. We got Warlock stuff, including this new legendary Kara, the Dark Star. But before we get into those, I wanted to remind you, we did see a few Warlock cards before. We had Archimond, who's all about resummoning demons that weren't from your deck. We got the Foreboding Flame, which is about discounting demons that didn't start in your deck. And then we got the Black Hole, this big Twisting Nether style removal that destroys everything except demons. So we saw the start of a demon package, which we're going to see a couple more pieces of today. And then we're also going to see this spell burst package that's kind of synced up with the Starship for Warlock as well. So we'll kick things off here with Kara the Dark Star, a 3-mana 3/3. Spell burst, steal 2 health from a random enemy. And much like a kind of inverse of the Priest Naru, which is very much a mirror of this, which is cool, by the way, shadow spells don't remove this spell burst. So if you're able to just keep chaining together shadow spells, you can start stealing a lot of health from random enemies. That can hit both face and enemy minions, so you could use this to kind of tidy up an early or mid-game board, or maybe use this as a soft finisher of sorts. You don't really expect this to put out enough damage to be like a crazy lethal threat or anything, but in a pinch, it could definitely start hitting the opponent a lot. If there's no other stuff on board, this could start popping off for quite a bit. And if you look at the shadow spells available to Warlock in Standard, there's actually quite a few cheap ones, like that 1-mana sweet spot that Priest was missing. Priest had a lot of like 2-mana stuff. Warlock does have access to a few more. The quality of these is kind of hit or miss, and maybe like synergy based, like Spirit Bomb, mainly is like a pain deck. Do you really want to use this? Maybe not, right? Curse of Flesh, Demonic Studies, like maybe you kind of put this in with the demon stuff, the Archimond package. Now the one card that is pretty interesting, I think, is Monstrous Form. This gives the +3/+3 to a friendly minion, which buffs this to 6/6. It's also going to steal 2 health, so it's going to go up to 6/8 off a single Monstrous Form. Normally the temporary nature of that buff would make you pretty sad, but in this case, like, hey, maybe that's all right. I just keep my Kara alive for another turn. Like, 6/8 still quite a bit to work through on turn 4. It's still clearable, honestly, against so many decks, but still it has a much higher chance to survive. So maybe this comes in a little bit faster because of the cheaper spell pool and a little bit more survivability. You could actually almost kind of play this on 3 or 4 and hope it sticks. Whereas that Priest one, we were talking about, like, man, probably has to go off on like 5 or 6, and then it's kind of too late. So the fact that this still has some utility late, because it can be a damage output sort of card, the fact that it can maybe come down a little bit sooner does make me like this one a bit more. It's also kind of more reactive as opposed to just developing threats. It has the ability to respond to things. So I think this is a bit of a better fit, although still doesn't have like exactly the shadow pool of spells you'd really hope for. And it may not get better because, rotation's going to be just around the corner. You got a little bit of mini set time. So it might take like another full cycle to get into another 6 expansion set to really get this all the tools that it needs. Not to mention some of the stuff we're getting right now, like Healthstone. This could be absolutely amazing if it were a shadow spell, but it's a fell spell, of course. It is still something you can finish on with Kara. The last spell, if you expect your Kara not to be relevant next turn, if you expect it to die, if you're just looking for that last 2 damage, obviously something like this could go that little extra reach necessary, but you don't want to weave this in too early or anything. So it's not like the foundation of this. But anyway, I think Kara's actually got a bit of a chance. Now, Healthstone, this is really cool. Like, this is such a classic, iconic Warcraft, particularly World of Warcraft thing. I cannot believe a Healthstone has never been in Hearthstone before. It's one of those you just kind of assume it was in the game, and it wasn't. Like, loading up your inventory with Healthstones and trading them out to the raid and stuff was like such a classic back in the day. But this is a cool 0-mana fell spell, tradable, and it restores all damage your hero has taken this turn. And I already saw some people freaking out about this, I guess in regards to wild format with Quest Warlock. I don't know about all that. In standard format, though, of course, we do still have, Pain Warlock has been a great deck. This could be the sort of thing where you take a big, crazy, scary turn in Pain Warlock, and you got a very cheap way to restore that health and reduce that risk so that, you're not scared to take those big, greedy turns that push you into like Molten Giant territory, and you don't sacrifice any tempo either. Like, you're still developing all the threats. You're still playing things on curve. I will say, like, taking up a slot in that deck is a premium. I think, like, you really have to make sure that you're hitting your threats on time. That deck is a very tight window to kill people. Like, it has to thread the needle when it comes to developing threats and pushing enough damage early. So having draws like this in the deck, even with that tradable that feels like a bailout, like sometimes costing that 1 mana just to replace this card when it could have been its own threat or way to take damage as a bit of a hedge against your game plan. I don't know if this actually fits in Pain Warlock, because you've already got the 4-drop guys, the Infernals, I think they're called. And they do the same sort of thing, but still while developing a threat, right? Like, they still develop that big 6/6 body, which is not irrelevant. That can be really hard for some decks to deal with, especially with Taunt. So is this actually a Pain Warlock card as we see it today? I'm not so convinced, but I do think there's still a possibility that this is good in other Warlock decks, because there are still just a lot of Warlock cards where you're taking damage, you're life tapping, and occasionally this will still be a potentially meaningful heal that just keeps you out of trouble here and there. Does it help you against your opponent's aggression? Not necessarily, but if you're running a handful of cards that do powerful things because they sacrifice health, this might be the way to enable those packages to get played and open up access to cards and lines and packages that you'd otherwise be a little bit too nervous to run. So I do think this card has a lot of utility, just maybe not in like the super aggressive Pain Warlock decks we see today, although I wouldn't totally write it off there either. Just my instincts tell me it's not a perfect fit. So moving on to Abduction Ray here, we have another enabler for that Archimond style package. Let's look at these one more time. Foreboding Flame, remember this is going to discount those demons that didn't start in your deck, and Archimond is going to resummon them. And Abduction Ray is going to help you get them. This gets a random demon and reduces its cost by 2, and then that is repeatable this turn. So you're kind of spending 2 now to net that discount back later. I mean, in theory, right, you've also got some discounts on the Foreboding Flame already, so you could have like each one of these be discounted by 4. So as long as you get something that's 4 or less, it's gonna be free. Which, like, yes, that does sound good, of course. I am worried about getting to a state of the game where that's viable, though, because you've already spent 4 mana on some 2/3s, and now you're spending another 2 mana to start getting the cards, right? So in other words, you've kind of got like 6 mana upfront spent already. You're like 6 mana behind on tempo, on threats, on aggression, and you may still not actually get playable cards. You might get like really big stuff that's coming a turn later, especially if you want to use the repeatable this turn aspect. You know, you're going to keep digging for things, and suddenly your upfront cost is up to 8, up to 10, and you know, you will get some like 0 cost 4-drop demons, but they're going to be random. How good are they going to be? How swingy are they going to be? How stabilizing are they going to be? I don't know, man. It's a really hard premise to me to say I'm going to do all of these things for this payoff later that is still very random and very inconsistent. And I will say too, a lot of demons are just kind of risky. Like you're sometimes going to get like flame imps off this, and it's like, oh my god, I've sacrificed all this tempo, I'm taking a ton of damage, and now I'm supposed to play a flame imp that I got, and I'm only saving 1 mana on it. It's like, oh god, what do I do? And there's a lot of little demons like that are just going to feel like throwaway. Little neutral demons, little risky demons, demons with, you know, specific momentary gameplay that's supposed to do something key in a moment that doesn't really fit. I mean, I'm just looking through the pool like, god, can I do a baritone imp? I'm taking 1 damage for just, you know, a tiny guy. Like, what's a bloodbound imp gonna do for me? Like, this is, you know, this is too risky to play. It's just a 2/5 and I can't attack with it. I mean, just look at all the really low cost demons that aren't even necessarily going to benefit much from all these discounts, right? And they're just not like a fearless flame juggler. It's so rarely going to actually be good, right? Malefic Rook. How do you play this? I can't take 5. I'm too far behind, right? And then there are definitely some bigger demons that you're probably very excited to get, like an Abyssal Bassist. Okay, I'll take that, dude. Like, I need some taunt. I need some lifesteal. The Mythical Terror, like that could be a home run. Absolutely, there are great high roll opportunities, but a majority of the cards are lower roll opportunities and are risky and are hard to actually get payoffs from. Like even Sacrificial Imp, like what? Okay, opponent just ignores this. I can't kill it off. I've got a demon that does nothing. So I really worry about this package. I think the randomness is going to be a struggle. I think the cost discounts will sometimes feel good, other times will feel kind of meaningless, and will just be on things that are already super cheap or just not that compelling. And I think it takes a lot of mana to get to a point where this even feels good. And the same thing with like Archimond, right? Like all of this is just kind of polluting the pool for Archimond. It's not like Archimond's always going to get a bunch of Doom Guards or whatever if you're using these particular cards to get it. So yeah, I mean, I'm just worried people are going to be hyped about this a little bit. Like, oh, look at all the demons. But I just want to like rein that in. I do think it'll be fun. I want to try it. I love Archimond as a character. I just am not convinced this kind of package is going to get it or be there. We also, I guess, didn't talk about Kill Jaden in this context again. We talked about him during the Kill Jaden review. Like, I actually think ignoring Abduction Ray, maybe even ignoring Foreboding Flames, and then like just running a Kill Jaden is a better route to a similar sort of game plan. And like maybe you still run Archimond for the Kill Jaden. I don't know, like, you know, maybe he's chilling in hand as your Kill Jaden loads stuff up. Like, it's just less of a commitment and less upfront, and it's kind of like coming at the end stage of a game instead of like all this setup is required. So I don't know, just a consideration to make. I'm basically not in love with this card much at all. Oh, so one other card here that sort of goes with this demon generation package: Infernal Stratagem, a 3-mana fell spell. Give a minion +3/+3. If it's a demon, your next one costs 2 less. So some more cost discounts here, and I do like that this allows you to cheat out big stuff early. I think that's a great consideration for cost discounts. Like suddenly I can play a 6-drop on turn 4, a 7-drop on turn 5, etc. thanks to the Infernal Stratagem. But you do need to, you know, hit a demon, so you need to make sure stuff is sticking around. Like if your 2-drop dies, you can't play this on turn 3. Suddenly it's kind of a 2-card combo later, which can be a little bit clunky or awkward on occasion, especially if you're trying to hit things reliably cheated out on curve. It's like, oh, well, I wanted to play the 6 on 4, and now I can't. I got to play this on 5 with a 2-drop, so that means I'm, you know, everything's kind of getting pushed back a little bit because I missed the given demon. But, you know, if you're really committed to an aggressive kind of demon-based package, that could be more possible. I think that means it doesn't really go with the generation stuff all that well. It's not bad because, you know, it's turn 6. I got a bunch of discounted demons. I throw one down with an Infernal Stratagem. The next one's even cheaper. Like, you can kind of create some dump turns out of that. But from an on-curve standpoint, it definitely doesn't feel as reliable because you're spending a lot more time kind of developing demons than actually playing them out until later, which makes you nervous because stat buffs, particularly in the late game, mid to late game, don't go as far as stat buffs early. You really want those to snowball on board early on, and that makes this a little bit weaker then. So I actually think this would be better in just like a, you know, some kind of zooey demon deck that has a reliable proven curve as opposed to a bunch of random generated demons and stuff. So I do see potential for this card, just maybe not with the other demon cards in this set, almost more independent of that in a full-on like committed demon deck. So next up here, I wanted to take a look at the Starship for Warlock. Super sick looking Starship, by the way. We got a couple Starship pieces here. Heart of the Legion. This is a 2-mana 3/2 with lifesteal. And you've also got Fellfire Thrusters, a 3-mana 2/3 with Spellburst. Deal this minion's attack damage to 2 random enemy minions. So much like the Hunter one where we talked about, you know, this does scale with buffs, which is kind of nice. And Spellburst notably does go off after the spell. So if you know you've used like Fellfire Thrusters into Infernal Stratagem, obviously it's not a demon, but you know, you might still, it's a buff, whatever, any buff. That would push this up to 5, and then the Spellburst would activate, I think, and it would deal 5 to 2 random enemy minions. So with any kind of, you know, minion-based buff, if you haven't activated your Spellburst yet, this is actually pretty good little clear in its own right. Then, of course, keep in mind, later on, when you've stacked up a bunch of stats on your Nether's Eye, and you've also weaved in Heart of the Legion, this is going to have, you know, a pretty high base attack, like 5, just with the 2 of these, potentially even bigger if you get more of these or more of the neutral ones. And then, you know, this could easily deal 10 to 2 random enemy minions, and it's going to have lifesteal. So this becomes, you know, a potential little board clear almost, depending on the number of minions, but can handle a couple big threats that also heals you for like 20 health potentially, because this is the minion dealing the damage in this case. So that's a pretty great stabilizing tool. I don't love playing out either of these necessarily on their own. Fellfire Thrusters might be okay if you have a cheap spell, maybe the Healthstone or whatever. Just, you know, it keeps up a little. This one's pretty throwaway though. Like, this is definitely just feeding into your Nether's Eye, and you may not want to wait too long. You may not be able to get like giant starships out of this because you just need to stabilize. So maybe, you know, just a couple of these, hit that early, just deal 5, you're happy, heal 10, then maybe set up for later as you're kind of trying to get to a stabilization point in the mid game. We should also talk about this spell, Bad Omen. This is the kind of complementary Starship piece. A 6-mana Fel spell in 2 turns. Summon 2 6/6 demons with taunt. That is terrible. Let's just be clear. The baseline of this is awful. If you're building a Starship, summon them now. That's okay, I think. It's still honestly not that crazy. There's just so many crazy boards built by turn 6 that 2 6/6 demons is okay. It's competitive enough, but it's not like exciting. You're not pumped to cheat this out. It's also at a weird cost, because if you're like desperate for your Starship and you play it on 5, you're not building a Starship anymore. You have to kill another Starship piece to be building a Starship. So on 6 is often actually kind of the worst time for a spell like this, because you may have already wanted to launch your Starship on 5, which could just create some awkwardness. So I actually don't think this looks very good at all to support the Starships. I think these are okay. So this Starship has left me in a kind of middling spot. I see some opportunity when you get all of it together, but I worry in particular if you miss the Fellfire Thrusters, your Starship just isn't going to be all that compelling. The lifesteal here without Rosh or something is hard to be utilized without exactly the Fellfire Thrusters, and then you also need the spell very often to immediately activate it. So maybe it's not always a 5-mana play. Maybe it is with the Healthstone. Maybe you kind of play Bad Omen on 6, then you play this on 5, your Starship on 5 with like a 2-mana spell. It just seems like it's coming online a little late and it's not that crazy. So not totally in love with, honestly, either of the Warlock kind of archetypes here, the Starship package or the Demon package. I think there are a few select cards that look really interesting, kind of independently almost. Could still be some building blocks here and there, but I'm not as convinced about the whole package. And I definitely think this demon stuff, this like generated demon stuff, it's feeling a bit like bait to me. I think the randomness is really going to hold this one back. But that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Kara is a 4-star card. Healthstone is a 4-star card. Abduction Ray is a 2-star card. Bad Omen is a 2-star card. Infernal Stratagem is a 3-star card. Heart of the Legion is a 3-star card. Fellfire Thrusters is a 3-star card. Yep, and that is your Warlock set. This one looks fun to me. Like, I think this looks really fun. I love Archimond. I like the idea of all these crazy chaotic demons. I don't know if it's going to be super good. I don't know if this is going to be able to supplant stuff like Pain Warlock right now. Maybe 1 or 2 pieces here is helpful to Pain Warlock, but that's probably it max. That said, Kara, I think this card's pretty cool. There might be some stuff that opens up a more control Warlock with the Starship pieces as a package in a control Warlock kind of shell. So don't give up on it just yet, but not as strong as some of the other things we've seen so far, in my opinion. So share your thoughts down below on the Warlock stuff. Thanks much as always for watching. Stay tuned for more reviews, and until next time, game on.